Hello friends, today we are going to talk about federalism, which is an important feature of the Indian political system and is an important part of the class and political science syllabus of CBSE. So in the modern world there are two types of government. One is the federal government and the other is the unitary government. These two the main difference between these two types of government is that in the federal government there are two levels or more levels of government, and each of these levels is independent of each other, while in the unitary form of government either the there is only one level of government, or the distinct units are agent of the bigger government. Yeah, meaning the subunits are not independent. So let's look at the features of the federalism. So the features of federalism are there are two or more levels of government. Different levels have govern the same citizens, but they have different jurisdiction, and this jurisdiction is defined by the constitution of this specific country. So what does jurisdiction mean? Jurisdiction includes legislative, administrative, and financial matters. So they have control over their own legislative, administrative, and financial matters. So the fundamental provisions of the constitution cannot be changed by one government. This is the fourth feature of federalism. The fundamental provisions of constitution cannot be changed by one government. The fifth feature is courts have power to interpret the constitution and jurisdiction, meaning if there is a dispute under about a subject, whether it comes under the jurisdiction of the central government or the state government, the courts can interpret under which jurisdiction it comes. And the highest court acts as an umpire for disputes between the two governments. In our country, it is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest court, and it acts as the umpire if there are any dispute between a particular state government and the central government, or two state governments. We also see that the sources of revenue for each level are defined, i.e., both the levels or more, but all the levels have financial autonomy. So, looking at these features, we are able to make out a thing that federalism has dual objectives. One of the objective is to maintain the unity and integrity of the nation, and the second objective is to accommodate regional diversity. So in one sphere we are trying to safeguard and protect the unity of the nation, and we are trying to accommodate regional diversity. When we are able to accomplish both of these things, we can be said to be a federal system. Now let's look at on what factors does the balance of power between central and state depend. So the balance of power between the central government and the state government depend on the historical context in which the federation was formed. For this we can classify federations as in two major ways: coming together federations and holding together federations. So in coming together for federations, small units, they came together to form a large independent unit. And in holding together federation, a large country decided to divide its power. So in holding together federation, center is more powerful, and all the states do not have equal powers. While in the coming together federations, all the states are equally powerful and as powerful as the center. If we take example of holding together federations, we get India, Spain, and Belgium. And for coming together federations, we have USA, Switzerland, and Austria. So now let's look at the federal features of India. In India, the Constitution of India declares India as a union of states, and thus it has federal features. Constitution also provides for two levels of government: union government or central government and state government. Later we also formed the municipalities and panchayats, which are part of the local government, and we'll study about them in detail later in the chapter. The constitution also provides the jurisdiction in legislative matters, as is a required feature for federalism. So the legislation is threefold. There are three types of lists. The first type of list is the union list. In the union list are all the subjects which are of national importance and need to have uniform legislation throughout the country. These include defense, banking, finance, currency, and communication. For this, I have made an acronym. The acronym is FDBCC. FDBCC: Finance, Defense, Banking, Currency, Communication. And the second list is the state list. It has subjects of local importance, and the laws are made by the state government only. For this, the examples are police, trade, agriculture, commerce, and irrigation. For this, also I have made an acronym. The acronym is CAPIT: Commerce, Agriculture, Police, Irrigation, and Trade. CAPIT. So these are the two acronyms which will help you learn the subjects in the state list and union list. And the concurrent list includes subjects of both state and national importance. Laws can be made by both government. Now the major question comes: what if the laws are conflicting? Then we get to know that the law of the central government will prevail. These include all the subjects which I have not mentioned above, including education, forest, and marriage, trade unions, etc. The constitution also provides for residuary subjects. These are to be under the jurisdiction of the center. You are recommended to go through the NCERT for the list of the subjects in concurrent list, but they are not so important. The constitution has also made provisions that its power distribution between center and state cannot be changed by one tier of government. Any change requires two-third majority in both houses of parliament and ratification by half of the total state legislatures. Then only the change can be approved. The judiciary plays an important role in the balance between power. It oversees the implementation of the constitutional provisions, and as I said, the dispute between powers is handled by the Supreme Court and High Court. And the respective governments can levy taxes to carry their activities, which ensures financial autonomy. So thus we can see that all of the features required by a federal government are present in the Indian context. Now we'll see that India has some unitary features also. These include that all states do not have identical power. Some states have special status. These states are like JNK, which has its own constitution, and non-residents cannot buy land in JNK. Also, many provisions of the constitution are not applicable in JNK unless approved by the state legislatures of JNK. But if you would be reading current affairs, this provision has been removed. And one more unitary feature of India is that union territories. They are areas too small to become states but cannot be merged into a state. So these are areas which are too small to be made states but cannot be merged into any state. This is because of various reasons. Like Chandigarh is disputed to be the capital of both Haryana and Punjab, so it can't be merged in any of them. Thus, it is a union territory. In these areas, central governments run these areas and they have very little power of their own. Now, let's see how federalism has been practiced throughout the centuries in India. The first way in which federalism was practiced was linguistic states. In 1947, states were created on basis of language. 1947. Some states were not created on basis of language but on basis of culture, geography and ethnicity. Example, Nagaland, Jharkhand, etc. Earlier, the leaders thought that creation of states on basis of languages would lead to disintegration of the nation. But this proved to be wrong, and the states, instead of disintegration, led to increase in unity of India and also helped to improve administration. The second way in which federalism is practiced in India is language policy. So in India there is no national language, but Constitution declares Hindi as the official language. There are 22 other scheduled languages including Hindi. For central government jobs, the exam which needs to be given civil services, it can be given in any of the 22 languages. We also see that states do have their own languages and much work is done in official language. For example, in Tamil Nadu, the official language will be Tamil, and much of the official work may be done in Tamil in the state. Originally, the use of English as an official language was to stop in 1965. But non-Hindi states like Tamil Nadu demanded continuation of English, and the central government with a cool-minded approach agreed to use English with Hindi for official purposes. Official policy of government still continues to be proportion of Hindi, but this does not mean that the government will impose Hindi on states which are non-Hindi based. And the last and the final way in which federalism is practiced in India is center-state relations. Mainly, if you see historically, for a long time, party at center and state were same, and thus the states did not exercise right as autonomous units. And in that time, when a state had a government different from that at the center tried to misuse the provision of president's rule present in the constitution to try to to dismiss the state government. But beginning from 1990, the era of coalition governments began, and this changed a lot. This happened in the sense that since 1990, no government was able to get a clear majority at the center. Thus, they had to form coalition governments, which included gaining support of regional governments as well. This led to culture of power sharing and respect for states. And near that time only, Supreme Court passed a judgment making it more difficult for center to impose president's rule on states. Last but not the least, we'll talk about decentralization in India. So we will talk about decentralization based on three aspects, which are why, what and how. So the first we will talk about why we need decentralization. So we know that India is a vast country and many states are larger than independent nations of the world. For example, Uttar Pradesh is larger than Russia in terms of population, and Maharashtra is about as large as Germany in terms of population. So we see that the states on their own cannot handle such large amount of population, and thus there is need for power sharing within states. So what was done to decentralize India? So decentralization is taking power away from states and center and giving it to local government. So this is the definition of decentralization. Taking powers from center and giving to states and local government. And the basic ideas is that large number of problems are best settled at the local level. And and another plus point of decentralization is that people can directly participate in decision making at local level, and this develops the habit of democratic participation. And this is also the best way to realize the principle of self-government by the people, self-governance. So the people govern themselves. So why do we need it? We need it because it was recognized by constitution, and several attempts were made by setting up panchayats and municipalities, but these attempts were not effective as not sufficient power was given to the local government and elections were not even held regularly. Major step was taken in 1992 when constitutional amendment took place. In this amendment, many new features were introduced. These include that it had become mandatory to hold elections to local government. Seats were reserved for elected body and executive heads for SCs, STs and OBCs. 1/3 of all positions were reserved for women. State government required to share power and revenue with the local government. An independent institution of state election commission set up for election to local government. So these 5 major features were introduced. Mandatory to hold election to local government, seats reserved, elected body and executive heads for SC, ST, SC, 1/3 of population reserved for women, state government required to share power and revenue, an independent association, state election commission, very important point, state election commission set up for local government. Now the last point we look at, how does this local government function? So in the rural areas, it is known as Panchayati Raj. So each village / group of villages has one Gram Panchayat, and it has several members which are called the Panch and a president which is called the Sarpanch. These are all 1 marker questions. What are the members of the Gram Panchayat called? What is the president of the Gram Panchayat called? And how are they elected? Elected directly by people of village. And Gram Panchayat works under the Gram Sabha. And all voters in the village are members of the Gram Sabha. So there is the Gram Sabha which includes all the members of the village. These vote to elect a Gram Panchayat which takes decisions. The Gram Sabha meets 2-3 times in a year and discuss the budget and review the performance of the Gram Panchayat. So, and next we see that Gram Panchayats together form Panchayati Samiti, and the Panchayati Samiti members, Panchayati Samiti is also known as Block Mandal. So Panchayati Samiti or Block Mandal. So these members are elected by Panchayat members of the Panchayati Samiti. And all Panchayati Samitis together form Zilla Parishad. So what are the members of the Zilla Parishad? Members of the Zilla Parishad include elected members, MLAs of the district, MPs of the districts and other officials. Head of the Zilla Parishad is the Zilla Parishad chairperson. So we see that at the village, the Gram Panchayat function. At one block, the Panchayati Samiti function. And at a whole district, the Zilla Parishad will function. Now let's look at local government in urban areas. In urban areas, municipalities are set up in towns and municipal corporations in big cities. So municipalities in towns and municipal corporations in big cities. The municipalities are headed by a municipal chairperson, and the municipal corporation is headed by mayor. And these municipal corporations and municipalities are so these municipal Corporations and municipalities are controlled by elected bodies which are elected by the people of the particular city or town. Thus, the people do not directly function in the towns and cities, but the local self government is still elected by the people of the particular city or town. Thus we come to an end of this chapter. I have uploaded the link of the notes in the description. Please check it out, and you can if you like the video, please like and please subscribe. Thank you for watching.